world. Welcome to this Transitioning Humanitarian live session that we were doing together with Vicky Hobinka. Unfortunately, she cannot make it in the next 3 episodes, but she will join me after that. So that's why, in the meantime, I thought that I would continue since we promised to you that we'll be returning in September. So that's what we're doing. So the latest news that I have from my side is that after so many ways of failing, that I'm finally coming to create my group coaching that I'm calling a lab for transitioning humanitarians, and we'll be launching it very soon. So I'm so excited about it. And that will be in September, so stay tuned for that. And until then, I wanted to use this live session today to talk about failing. I feel like I'm getting better and better at failing. I used to be at first someone who would literally soak up in shame after failing and cover all the covers of my bed and then cry for hours and hours, and then wake up and barely eat something, and then go back and cry for hours and hours. This is how I used to deal with failing. And I have now come to a point where my failing looks something like I want to fail in advance, meaning that I set my goal, start working on it, and then start putting everything together. And then I start believing that it's not going to work. And then I start not putting effort to making it work. And then I make my own failing predictions come true. Right? So this has been my pattern and my journey of dealing with failure. And the reason why I wanted to talk about this is because I feel like a lot of humanitarians, the number one reason why they're not transitioning to the life they want to, or to creating whatever life they want to, is because of fear of failure. And I can totally understand that. And it's one of those powerful stopping points. And a lot of people keep telling themselves that what if I fail? What if this happens? What if that happens? That's actually, telling themselves that they're going to fail. So if they're going to fail, they will be feeling ashamed, disappointed, guilty, regretting, and then they will probably come back to where they are. So instead of going through all of that cycle, why not just stay where I am? At least here I know what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. And even if I have all these difficulties, even if I have all the reasons why I would like to transition, but instead of experiencing that shame, that disappointment, I'd rather stay. Right, so that's probably a lot of the humanitarians are going through, and I wanted to help you maneuver through that and come to the other side. I read recently on the Facebook, someone was saying that a lot of dreams are killed not by failure, but by doubt. And that's a beautiful way of saying it. And I would love to modify that saying a bit to say that a lot of our dreams as humanitarians might be actually killed by our fear of experiencing that shame, that guilt, that disappointment. Even though we might be experiencing that already in the places where we are working, but because we are not really showing it to others, or we're not really feeling like no one is looking at us, then we will be dealing with somehow inside, and we don't really discuss it and talk about it, or we feel like we're not really failing, right? So the way that I would love for you to ask the question if you are thinking of transitioning is not the question of what if I fail, but the question of how are you going to deal with when you're failing? Because failing is inevitable in every new journey. Even not in every new journey, but let's say that every new journey always entails failure. And I think we are recognizing it more and more as a society as well. And we're recognizing that failure has a lot of advantages and why it happens and why it should happen. Yet I think we often come to this approach of, yeah, I will fail, but I will know what to do. Or I used to do that as well before transitioning, is I would tell myself, yes, I will fail, but I will know what to do, or I will somehow deal with it. Let's see, whatever happens, happens, and then I will do something about it, right? So instead of doing that and don't do what I did in my own transitioning journey, instead of doing that, ask yourself, how are you going to deal with those failures, and what are the ways that you will actually fail? And I think that's more useful question, and not hiding in the sand, but rather foreseeing it, that this is part of the plan, we will fail, and what are we going to do? So what are the ways that you could fail? Let's brainstorm it a little, because it also needs to be very concrete, right? And also, what is failure is something that you could define for yourself as well. It's probably something like your fear of experiencing shame, disappointment, guilt. And failure essentially is you expecting something to be happen by that time period, and that thing is not happening by that time period. That's it. And your brain will interpret that as a failure. And whenever your brain will interpret that as a failure, then it will start creating lots of emotions, lots of feelings of, you shouldn't have done this, you should know better, you are responsible, how could you do this to your family, to yourself, you are a grown-up person, you are educated, or you are intelligent, or whatever the things that your brain will throw at you as to why or how could you fail, and how could you not take care of this. And in those moments, how are you going to treat yourself? What are you going to do, right? So this is what we'll be talking about. So what are the ways that you could fail? Everyone's journey is different, obviously, but I think the categories of failure that we can expect probably are very similar to from one story to another. So one of the biggest one is whether we'll find whatever the fulfilling job or work that we want to do, whether we'll be able to live in the places that we want to do together with our loved ones, right? Whether we'll be making the amount that we want to, and whether we'll be able to afford those lifestyle choices that we are so accustomed to. I would say, see, these are the four areas probably where you can expect that there might be some failures happening or about to happen, or your brain will be interpreting that that's what's happening, and how are you going to deal with it, right? So in terms of the job opportunities, so you could tell yourself that these are the jobs that I will want to have, and I don't want to be looking at anything else, or this is the job that I will feel like it gives me fulfillment, this is what I want to try, or this is how I'm going to create the job that fulfills me, and also how do I feel, or how do I create that fulfillment around that job. So these are the things that you want to be thinking about. And also, if you're telling yourself that I need to have that job by this time period, and ask yourself, what are you going to do if that time period expires? Right? In other words, how are you going to treat yourself if that time period expires? And how are you currently treating yourself when you're failing, or when you're experiencing things in the way that you don't want to be experiencing? How you treat yourself, that will actually indicate how you will be treating yourself in the future as well. A lot of the times that I see people do, and I used to do that as well myself, is that we tend to be punishing ourselves a lot, or we tend to be saying things like making it very personal, right? It's like, you are not a good person, you are a responsible person, you are uh, how could you do this? It's like very much the verbal attack that we have in our own brain will be so much attacking us as a person. And I would love to discourage you from doing that as much as possible. So whenever you are experiencing that, um, failure in your own words, right? So you could ask yourself, how do you want to be treated in that moment? So if, let's say, if you don't get the job by the time frame that you said you would get, how do you want to treat yourself? What are the ways that you will find the solutions without punishing yourself, without soaking in the you are not a good person or you are irresponsible person, without attacking you as a person? So the other one could be that staying in the places that you want to with your loved ones, if that's not working out, if that's too expensive, or if it's not going to go as you wanted, how are you going to solve that problem? What are the other options that you could solve for it? The money's question, right? So, what is the minimum amount that you feel like you need to have in order to feel safe? And if you're approaching to that amount in the future, how are you going to deal with it? What are the other options you will have? Will you go back to work, or you will find something else to do? Right? So I noticed that when my savings were going very down and down, I remember thinking, "Oh my God, I'm failing. This is how failure is like. I will never be able to get that money back, or I will never be able to do that or this." And then my brain would also be saying things like, if you work back in your old job, this wouldn't happen. You wouldn't be doing this, or you wouldn't be having this, you wouldn't be experiencing this. And my brain would be like almost punishing it with my own words of, you see, you did this, you are doing something wrong, right? So in those moments, how do you want to stop yourself from punishing yourself, from verbally abusing yourself, but instead looking at it very practically and saying that, if this happens, I will be doing this. I don't need to punish myself. I don't need to verbally abuse myself. I don't need to do any of those things because they're not useful anyway. So, and also it's important that you recognize why you decided to transition in the first place and how you actually planned as much as you could at the time. And these are the things that you couldn't foresee, and that's okay. It doesn't mean that you are an irresponsible person. It doesn't mean that you did something wrong. If anything, by transitioning, you actually wanted to pursue what you really wanted. And that's actually a very great thing to do. So you should actually be proud of doing that instead of punishing yourself, right? So that's why I'm just giving you different ways to look at that cycle of how we may get into this self-punishment mode and break that cycle by focusing on how are you going to solve it, what are the ways you're going to solve it. And also one of the biggest uh, keys, I guess, that I have learned in my own journey of failing and recovering from it is that we as human beings are actually good or capable of going through shame, capable of going through guilt, going through disappointment, and recovering from it and healing from it, processing it. And we are capable of doing it no matter what conditions we're in. And we just need to recognize when we're experiencing that shame and those disappointment, when we're experiencing that, what we often tend to do is we tend to avoid it by reacting to it, right? We tend to like self-punish ourselves, which is another way of distracting ourselves from experiencing that shame, experiencing that disappointment. We may distract ourselves with any other way so that we don't experience it because it's very uncomfortable to experience it. Sometimes we feel it like a very painful experience. And we are actually capable of experiencing that painful things and not react to it, meaning not to start changing things afterwards, not to say like, okay, I have to go to work now or I have to do something else. If we don't want to, we don't need to. So we're actually capable of experiencing that shame, experiencing that disappointment, that guilt, and not do anything about it or not to react to it. So, if you're not tuned to experiencing these emotions, I suggest that one of the great strategies that you could take up now is, even before transitioning, even now where you are now, you could actually observe how you deal with shame, observe how you deal with disappointment, how you deal with frustrations, how do you process them. And if you're someone who always wants to react to things to avoid those feelings, then start practicing experiencing that now. The more you are good at experiencing those emotions, those feelings, the more you will be able to handle the failure, because you will know that any failure, behind that failure that we label as a failure, there are two, three very powerful emotions behind it. And a lot of the things we avoid doing, we don't want to be doing because that failure is labeled with very strong emotions. And because we believe that we cannot handle those emotions, that we don't even pursue what we're desiring, because our desire probably in that moment is not as strong, as powerful as those emotions. And that's why we tend to rather suppress the desire than be willing to experience that shame, that guilt, that disappointment. Because once we experience through, once we process through, what happens is that there is this exhaling feeling, of course, but then there is this clarity in your mind. At least this is how I experience it. After all of that shame, all of that guilt, all of that disappointment, there is this clarity. And that clarity usually tells me this is how we're going to go. And I don't even need to force myself to go in that direction, or I don't even need to think a lot about it. It's just like as if my body was waiting for those emotions to wash through me, and then once they do, right, then I have this such a clarity to say, this is how I'm going to go, this is how I'm going to act, right? So if I were to summarize for you what I have said in terms of how you're going to deal with failures that your brain will be labeling as failures, so one, definitely stop if your brain starts offering to self punish you, or your brain starts offering to tell you all the things of how bad of a person you are and attacking your personality. Stop that cycle, because you should know, and if you don't know by now, you probably will find out soon, that there's no use of it. It's like the violence within your brain is absolutely not necessary. So that's why if your brain wants to go there and do that, stop that, and instead get very practical as to how you're going to solve the situation. And in that moment, when you are solving the situation as a second, what will happen is that you will need to go through those emotions. You will need to go through that disappointment, shame, and guilt washing through you. And it's okay, let them wash through you, because what will happen afterwards is they will give the clarity as to what needs to be done or what you need to do. So that's why allow yourself go through those emotions, trust yourself that you can experience and process those emotions. And then once they go through, then you will have the clarity as to how you will solve it next. What are the ways you can solve it next? What are the other options available to you that you could try it out? And one of them maybe is going back to work, and that's absolutely fine. So don't allow yourself to shame yourself if you decide to go back to work, because a lot of the times what will also happen is that we decide to go back to work because we ran out of money or whatever else we had difficulty with to solve, right? So we go back to work and then we shower ourselves in shame of how we didn't make it outside or in the, for instance, non-humanitarian world. So how we are back and feeling shame, not needed. That's optional. And if your brain will be saying like, well, everyone's looking at me, everyone's telling how you couldn't make it, so you're back, they're probably judging me and all of the things. If they're doing it, let them. We don't know, but if your brain thinks that they're doing it, fine, let them do it, but you don't need to do that to yourself. You don't need to judge and become, let's say, one of them to be judging you. Don't do that to yourself. Just let it go of, yes, this is what you decided to do. It might be a temporary solution, it might be a long-term solution. You don't know it yet, but you've tried, and you had a plan to do something, and it didn't work out. You decided to go back. That's one of the options. There might be many other options that you can tell yourself to go and explore as well. For instance, one of the things that I tell myself whenever I have this issue of, oh, I'm failing, things are not working, and all of these things, one of the ways that I always tell myself that I want to be doing this work no matter what. I want to be doing my work of what I'm doing no matter what. Even if I don't have any money, or even if I need to sleep on the streets, or even if I will be homeless, I will be doing this work anyway because this is what I love doing. And if my brain tells me that, well, you're being responsible, you have lots of family to feed back home, how are you going to afford that? I always tell myself, I will always find a way. I trust myself that I find a way. I may not know it now, but I will. If anything, I can consider going back to work, but for now, that's not what I'm considering, and that's okay. And I will always find a way to take care of my family and take care of myself while I do the work that I love doing. So, in these situations, when I tell this, I really need to bring my trust back. I really need to remind myself that I can trust myself, that I can do this work, and failing at it and finding a way to recover from it as well. Right? So that's why it's important, as well as the next step after you know what to do, also trusting your own judgment that you are capable of doing it. Right? So a lot of the times, I think when we fail, we tend to also have this tendency of not trusting ourselves, or saying that, you see, you failed, so how good are you, or you can't be trusted, or whatever the things that we may be telling ourselves. In that moment when we're failing, it's important that we bring back that trust in ourselves. We restore that trust, wherever the trust may have gone. We need to bring it back, as if we need to bring it back, and then remind ourselves that I can trust myself. I can trust myself that I can make things work. I can trust myself that I can find other help to get to make things work. I trust myself that I will find different options to work on. Right? I trust that whenever I'm pursuing what's really important to me, I will always find a way. So whatever the thoughts that works for you to bring your trust back, bring that. And then you notice that when your brain is labeling something as a failure, or about to be a failure, and whatever not, you notice that you can bring that trust, and then say, if I trusted myself, how would you solve this? How would I go to do the next thing? What do I need to do as next? So, with all of this, my dears, all I wanted to advocate for is that whatever the desire you're having, whether you want to be excellent at what you're doing currently or be excellent at what you want to do as a new passion, as a new pursuit, whatever that desire is, I would love for you to take my word on it, not to let failure stop you, not to let shame, disappointment, regret, guilt, not let all of these feelings stop you from pursuing that. Because whatever those heavy emotions you are capable of processing, going through, and the more you go through those, the more muscle you build as to how much you can actually pursue what you really want. And that way you will grow so much, and also you will know how to take care of yourself while you're processing going through those heavy emotions. And that will give you this balance of how you are, on the one hand, very courageous, pursuing whatever you want to and loving what you're doing, and at the same time dealing with those heavy emotions, but also trusting yourself that you can go through those heavy emotions, trusting yourself that you're capable of not only going through but also knowing what to do next after them, and then pursue that further. Because I'm noticing that the more heavy emotions that I can process and handle and go through, the more trust I have to say, I can do this. I am capable of doing it. I can do this. And I can pursue even bigger dreams. I don't need to hide because of those emotions. I don't need to change my plans because of those emotions. Because we have amazing bodies to handle whatever the emotion that comes our way. We just need to learn not to be afraid of them. And that's what I want to invite you to get coaching from me, to learn how you deal with those heavy emotions of shame, disappointment, guilt, how you can deal with them already now so that you get better and better dealing with them. And then once you transition and pursue your dreams, then you will know what to do, when to do, and how to rely on your trust to deal with them. Okay, my dears, thank you so much for listening to me. I hope it was useful, and I will be speaking to you next Thursday, as usual, about many other topics relating to transitioning humanitarians. Then, stay safe and talk to you next Thursday. Bye.